Hi, my name is Maurice Hayes, Maurice and I'm the founder of HV Neighborhood Transformation. Well, the organization itself was started maybe 15 years ago in the Illinois Department of Corrections. My brother and I, William Brown, started this organization after we founded the first one, which is SPIT with a Purpose. And the SPIT stands for Social Problems Intellectually Translated with a Purpose. And our goals mainly is to inject hope back into our communities. Prior to us coming home, we witnessed all the ills that was taking place in the neighborhoods, all the killings, all the young people coming in and out of prison. And as men who once participated in those ills, we felt the need to be responsible for trying to bring some kind of cure to them. So HV, the letter stands for Hood Vote, Hood Voice, and Hood Vision. And it's just that in order to enact change, we have to change the policies, we have to utilize our voices, and we have to have a vision of what we want the community to look like. And so we took on that challenge to bring that to fruition and to plant ourselves in all these high hope areas, not only in Champaign-Urbana, but we also have HV Chicago as well, that we're pushing to do the same thing there. Some of the ones that people may be more familiar with is the peaceful protest that took place at the courthouse. We were a part of that and helped to organize and create that beautiful vibe that we had and the support of the community, which kind of launched the company in itself. It brought us more forward because we've been working on this company maybe for 4 months, actively working on it for 4 months. And that was the first thing that we did. And unfortunately, Mr. Floyd pretty much spawned that whole movement, or this whole movement that you guys are seeing and we're seeing throughout the country and the world. We also did the Juneteenth event, which was our first event, just bringing community to the communities, right? Those high hope areas, most people refer to them as high risk areas, but we tend to call them high hope areas. So one of our objectives is to get into the side of those and bring new people in and shower those communities with love as well. Coming up, what we have is the 40 Days of Peace and 40 Days of Community Building initiatives, where it just adds more to what we did for Juneteenth. We're trying to figure out what the communities need, how we can facilitate those things taking place in the community. And from our end, we're just gonna shower them with love again and compassion and introduce them to different resources that they may have not been aware of or privy to, and bring those people to these high hope areas as well. One thing that we all know and we all can agree upon is the high hope areas are really the underserved communities of this huge community that we have. And it's been like that for years. I'm from one of those high hope areas myself, so going back into them and bringing things to them is what we want to do, or bringing things to us. I don't even want to separate us from who they are. We all want to go back to the same place where we helped to destroy and help to rebuild it. Teaching people about voting rights and the power of voting rights, the school board and how they educate our children, police, how they police our communities and our neighborhoods. There's so many different things that HV wants to attack, and we utilize a collaborative effort. All the organizations, the IMC in itself, again, I told you guys I had an office upstairs, and even before Mr. Floyd's untimely death, we had been working on a lot of initiatives to bring out of IMC, and we've been propelled a lot. So it's great that the movement is doing what it's doing, but at the end of the day, we have to bring change, right? We can rally all day, we can protest all day, but if we're not holding those city officials and police chiefs and all those people accountable to enact change, then most of the marching is futile. Protesting is not enough. What protesting does is it shows our voice, it makes our voices louder, and now people are paying attention. So now that we have people paying attention, now it's time to hold those that's in power to really change things, hold them accountable. So one thing about HV Neighborhood Transformation is we are advocates for voting. We are advocates for holding the people that's supposed to represent us accountable. So what we're doing now, even with the protesting and the mobilizing, we're getting ready to enact voter registration getting out to the communities and educating people on their voting rights and what we need to do in order to bring this change. We are actually putting together a comprehensive plan specifically for the school board and how they educate our children and what it is in the systematic racism that prevents them from learning the necessary things that they need. I was in the schools, Alberta high schools, for a little while, mentoring some of the youth in there. And when I was there, and it was going well, but just because myself and my partner who was with me were ex-felons, subsequently they ended up kicking us out of the school, and the principal, vice principal, and the superintendent ended up being fired or replaced or moved to a different position for those reasons. So in change, the community have to mobilize. Our voices have to be heard more so than in rallies and protests, but we have to show up at these city council meetings. We have to show up at the voting booth. We have to show up at the school board meetings. We have to show up and hold the people accountable and let them know what we need in our communities in order for us to get it. And if we don't get it, then we'll put somebody in office that will get it for us. Taylor and I, a year, 2 years ago, he was part of an organization called Truth that worked with CUAP. And we walked into Urbana High School one day. We spoke to the administration there and told them who we were and what we wanted to do. And they welcomed us with open arms. So we were inside the schools. We were talking to a lot of the students or the High Hope students or the students that they consider to be bad kids. Spoke to them, had a great conversation with them daily. And once the school administration and other teachers got wind of who we were and our backgrounds, the chaos ensued from there. And then, like I said before, ultimately we moved from the school. We couldn't go back into the school. And sadly enough, the two people that were in charge, which is Jorge Avera and Dolores Brown, subsequently lost their jobs because of it. But what they were doing were trying to do the same thing that the school board is asking to do now. Restorative practice and restorative justice is one of the things that Jorge Avera was really pushing for, and Dolores Brown were really pushing for, along with Dr. Bynum and Don as well. And now that these things have taken place, now they're asking for the same thing that they were trying to implement 2 years ago. So when it comes to a lot of different people that's in politics or in power here in Champaign and Urbana, I go at them with a cautious hand, because there's nothing different now that we were saying 2 years ago. And the unfortunate part, and I apologize to these guys all the time, is that they lost their careers or their jobs because of this. So I want people now to start recognizing that these changes we've been asking for a long time. You're saying you're going to enact these changes now, but how can we believe you? What is it about what you're saying now versus what we were saying then that will allow us to believe that you're sincere in your attempt to end systematic racism in these school systems? So what we're doing, we're going to go at the school board. We're going to go at the school board. We're going to go at all those individuals that's in charge. And I spoke to these people directly myself. And from one, the interim superintendent told me that I would have to go talk to the governor in order for us to be in the position to change what was going on in the schools. He said there was nothing that he can do. And this was a guy who, after they fired Don or replaced Don, a guy that was paid $140,000 for 6 months. What can you do in 6 months to really enact real change inside of a school? And so from that point on, I never really dealt with the school board anymore. But now that the communities are mobilizing, all these High Hope areas are mobilizing, we will allow our voices and our vote to bring the vision that we want for our children and for our community. I used to oftentimes talk to Don and Jorge about not telling what their story is, right? Not telling the people exactly what happened to them and why it happened. Those guys were doing great things. They were really trying to bring about change. They know. And then Don is amazing. That's my man. I love Don to death. Because for him to be a white man and then see these things that are really affecting the communities and black and brown children, to bring some kind of focus to that, and for him to lose his job because of that makes no sense to me, right? So that means that the people who decided to fire him or replace him were in agreement with the systematic racism that was taking place. they agree with it. And then for Jorge to be an administrator and Dolores to be a principal and assistant principal, they were fighting for change for those kids that's not getting it. They was trying to change how you discipline the kids. Why kick them out of school or suspend them at home when you can have them inside the class, or you can have someone else giving them the same lessons that they need. And then the expulsions come so rapidly without any. I've been to a few of the expulsion hearings, some IEP meetings as well, and it's like people just fill out paperwork and then pass the paperwork along. They never really put any energy into the individual child or the process of bettering that child or those children. And what they were doing was phenomenal, and we're still going to do it. We're still going to push forward in it in many ways, even if it takes getting people out of their positions and people losing their jobs, the president of the school board and all these other people who are really in favor of the systematic racism that's been going on for generations, man, generations. When you speak about defunding the police and allocating those funds elsewhere to like community activities, community service, and all those things, I'm in total agreement with that. I don't think all cops are bad, right? I think the ones that are need to be replaced. I think the officers that salute and some kind of way condone the acts of officers need to be replaced and all those things. But I also think that the police need to get more acquainted with their community. I think that's the biggest issue. And even for my community, I talk to people and I say, well, we often have a bad eye for cops, right? So I say, why not raise our children to want to be cops? These are kids that live in the community. These are kids that grew up knowing what's going on in the neighborhoods. And if I think about my granddaughter, I'm 43, I have 2 grandkids. So when I'm gone, I would want for my grandson maybe to be a cop, or my brother's son to be a cop, or my daughter to be a cop. Somebody that's from those communities that know what those communities need and that will really have a relationship with the community. When I was younger, they had a program called CAPS. This was in the 80s, where they would it was part of a summer program, where they would take kids and train them as young officers. CAPS, teach them firearms, teach them what the laws are, all those things. And somehow we went away from those things. Now cops have this bad name. All cops aren't bad. The ones that we see doing those things that they're doing is condoned by their superior. It's kind of taught by their superior. These are the things that go on in prison as well. Handcuffing guys, kicking them down the stairs, locking them in their cells in handcuffs for days on end, this kind of thing. So we just need to keep bringing more attention to it. Defunding them, yeah, removing some of their financial stability from them will be great, but also for those who still are a part of the force, adding stipulations and incentives to them, right? When you fire your weapon, for whatever reason, if it's unjustified, we have to deal with that, right? If you shoot and kill someone, we have to deal with that. We have to really put real light on it, not just when something like Brother Floyd happens or the multiple murders that's been taking place, but simple things. Well, not so simple, but just look at Aaliyah Lewis. Everyone in the world can watch that tape and see that officer punched her, kneed her. God knows what they did to her when we weren't around, but just those 2 acts in itself. For you to condone those 2 acts in itself says something more about you. You can physically see it happening to her, but no one is charged with it. So laws have to be changed. It's not just about defunding the police, it's changing the laws, it's changing the policies that would allow officers to do those things unchecked and unchallenged. So bigger than the protest or anything is we have to utilize our right to vote, our right to voice our opinion, and then as a community bound together to get these rogue people away from our communities if we're saying we want community, right? We know these are rogue officers. We know these are rogue cops. We know they're doing wrong things. So the community as a whole should come together and get rid of them. What we're doing is we're going into the communities.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're going directly into the communities and we're greeting, we're meeting, we're knocking on doors. Hello, I'm Maurice. Hello, I'm Rita, hello, and I'm Keith, hello, and that's what community looks like. Now neighbors are afraid to knock on their neighbor's door. I used to live in the projects when I lived in Chicago as a kid, and I often make mention of this when I speak. I remember sitting on or sleeping in my grandmother's front yard on Roosevelt and Racine in the projects, no fear at all. I remember going into the buildings to see my cousins and whoever with no fear at all. I know the next door neighbor will whip my butt if I did something wrong. I know the lady down the street, Ms. Johnson, gonna whip my butt if I do something wrong and when I go home. And I also know Ms. Johnson's gonna feed me if I'm hungry. She's gonna help me across the street. She's gonna provide whatever it is that we need. That's community. And we were super impoverished then, right? It was really a poor area then, but some way we loved on each other. We grew up amongst each other, we grew up with each other. And I don't know what really took it away, but I often equate it to the crack era. Crack era kind of stole parents. The crack era robbed neighborhoods of the natural richness of love and compassion that was grown in these communities. And we haven't recovered from that since. So now, by me being a product of the crack era, I profited from the crack era. I sold drugs, I did all those things, but now that I'm home, it's time for us to bring the community back and put ourselves in those places, because a lot of fathers and a lot of men are in prison or dead. So if I'm the only man on my block, every kid on that block belongs to me. Every one of them, every child that walks the street, I have a responsibility for that child. So we teach now, we go back in and we hug again and we let them know that even if your dad's not here, you got Uncle Reese, you got Uncle Will, you got Auntie Rita, you got Auntie Jazz, right? That's community, right? And we're gonna go there, we're gonna party with you, we're gonna teach you, we're gonna educate you, we're gonna grow with you, and we're gonna mobilize behind you. And that's what community looks like. That's how you bring it back from the inside out, like an implosion. You go in and you come out instead of the opposite way. Because when you try to come from the top, you have to knock all these different layers down before you get there. But if you go down to the soil and then you dig the soil up and plant the seed, you will see everything that grows from it. So that's our job as HVNT. That is what we're exactly doing. And we're not asking anyone for any money. It's great if you want to donate, but we don't want to accept any money from no government officials, because you're not going to tell us what to do with it. We're not going to accept any money from anyone who has dictatorship attached to it. We'll fund it ourselves because we know what the mission is. We know what the purpose is and we know what our agenda is. And we're just going in. That's just what we're doing, we're going in. Anytime you try to enact change, you're creating a revolution, right? My organization is just piggybacking off the many organizations that came way before us. Right? I think about the Black Panthers, I think about Black Wall Street, I think about all these organizations, the civil rights movement in itself, even when they came into the community, I think about those people as we lead our fight, because we're a newer generation. It's 2020. Things aren't the same as they were in the 60s. Things aren't the same then. So with the ideal of change and the ideal of how things have evolved in society, we take a different approach. So it is a revolution. And it will be televised, as they say, and neighborhood transformation will be recognized. Not the organization, but the neighborhood transformation. Transforming the actual neighborhoods and bringing them back to communities, right? Hood vote. Hood is just a short version of what neighborhood is, right? And in our culture, we call it we in the hood. But the hood is just a state of mind. It's not a place where you live, right? It's a state of mind. And for so long, we've been indoctrinated with the wrong information that created the state of mind that we live in. So now it's time to reteach, to re-indoctrinate. And this is the perfect time, if any time was the perfect time, because everybody's ears are open. People are waiting for someone to come and give them information that can change their lives and propel them in a different place. And the fortunate part about it is that the people are doing it. As far as my organization, we come from prison. It was like sitting inside of I use the analogy like we're looking inside of a football huddle from the outside, and we see all the plays that's going on. So we know how to defend it, right? We know how to attack what they're gonna do. So now that we're home, and there's so many of us that are home that's doing the same work, we're gonna attack their plays. We're gonna attack them from the bottom of them, from where you started at, right? So if you say that the hood is the worst place to be and people don't wanna go in the hood, then damn it, we going in the hood. We're gonna go there, and we're gonna change it from there. And once we change it from there, those people that are up here in trouble, because now you've mobilized the people that has been silent for forever. Been silent for forever. So you were able for generations and generations to do whatever it is that you wanted to do to benefit yourself at the cost of the people. I call them poverty pimps, people that profit off the plight of the people. So now the people's voice is going to be heard. The people are going to decide who's going to be in there representing them, and we're going to spearhead that fight. We're going to spearhead that fight. It doesn't stop with the polls up top, right? We have to start from the bottom. We have to start with aldermen, city council people, school board officials, mayors, judges, state's attorneys, all these people that our vote puts them in their office. If they're not representing us, then we have to use the vote to get them back. That's power in numbers, right? And if we're all moving for the same goal, if we're all moving towards the same end result, it makes it more powerful. It gives you more voices, it gives you more agendas, it gives you more people that's going to fight for you. And it's camaraderie as well, right? The organizations that we've partnered with, we know what our task at hand is. And no matter what our individual beliefs are for whatever other stuff that life brings us, we know that this mission is a mission that together we all will fight. And we're gonna have each other back. I want to use it's like a gang, right? If you're a part of an organization or a gang, you know your people got your back. So if I'm from out west and another gang member of mine is out south, if I go out south, I know they got my back. Now that we're moving in the realm of positivity, it's the same analogy. We're a gang. We're a gang that's moving towards peace and justice and freedom and equality for everybody. Not just us, everybody. And if you recognize that we haven't been getting that equality, and you say, well, I recognize that, and I think you deserve this well, and I'm gonna fight my ass off to make sure you get it, we're gonna shake your hand and say, come on, join us. That's the beauty of a coalition. That's the beauty of all these organizations. And they're popping up everywhere. It's not the same organizations that have been in Champaign-Urbana for 20 years and they did nothing. That's true. There's a lot of organizations here in Champaign-Urbana that has not done anything when it comes to these high hope areas, right? They're lining their pockets. Poverty pimps, people that profit off the plight of the people. The coalition that we have, we're not. And my organization, we've been funding ourselves. We haven't asked anyone for any money. We're doing it because it's our passion. And the work needs to be done. Again, I do it for my grandkids. If I'm dead and gone, I want my grandbabies to grow up different than what I did. I have a son, he's serving 50 years in prison right now, right? He has 2 kids that he left out here when he went. It's my job to make sure that they're gonna be okay. So that's what we're fighting for.